I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. My name is Jennifer Jones. I am 69 years old. On the day my husband's will was read, my sons divided $30 million between themselves as if they were splitting poker chips after a successful night at the casino. William got the construction companies. Daniel inherited the restaurant chain, the estates, the luxury condos, the sports cars, everything. Absolutely everything. And I, after 45 years of dedicated marriage, after sacrificing my entire life for that family, received a dusty envelope that looked like trash. The reading of the will took place at the office of Rachel Atkins, our family lawyer. I arrived early, wearing my best lavender dress, the one Michael had given me on our last anniversary. I thought it would be a formality. After half a century together, it seemed logical that my husband would have left me protected. The conference room felt too cold, or maybe it was just my nerves. William sat across from me, checking his phone every few seconds. Daniel and Lauren, William's wife, whispered to each other, occasionally glancing my way with expressions I couldn't quite read. Rachel began to read in a cold, professional voice. To my son William, I leave the construction companies valued at $12 million. William smiled like a child on Christmas morning. His eyes lit up with satisfaction, and he leaned back in his leather chair, crossing his arms over his expensive suit. To my son Daniel, I leave the restaurant chain which generates $8 million a year, Rachel continued. Daniel settled into his chair with visible satisfaction, exchanging a smirk with his brother. The estates on the coast, the condos downtown, the luxury cars, the main accounts. Everything was divided between them like the spoils of war. $30 million split equally while I sat there, invisible, waiting to hear my name. When Rachel finished reading the endless list of properties my sons were inheriting, she paused. She looked at some papers and said, "For Mrs. Jennifer Jones." My heart sped up. Finally, I was going to hear what the love of my life had left me. Rachel continued, "I leave her this personal envelope." And she handed me a yellowish, dusty envelope that looked like it had been stored for years in some forgotten drawer. I took it with trembling hands while my sons exchanged satisfied glances. Lauren, my daughter-in-law, couldn't contain her laughter. "At least you can use it to store recipes, mother-in-law." William didn't even look up from the documents he was reviewing. Daniel sighed as if my presence were an annoyance to be tolerated. The envelope weighed almost nothing in my hands. It felt empty. It felt like a mockery. Rachel closed the will folder and turned to my sons to explain the legal procedures they had to follow to take possession of their inheritance. They talked about wire transfers, deeds, and corporations. As if I wasn't there. As if I were a ghost sitting in that leather chair. I stood up slowly, put the envelope in my purse, and walked to the door. No one said goodbye. No one asked if I needed help. No one offered me a ride home. I left that office with a broken heart, feeling that 45 years of love and sacrifice had been reduced to a dusty envelope that probably contained a sentimental letter with no real value. I walked through the streets of the city where I had lived my entire adult life, where I had built a family that now treated me like garbage, and I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely find my car keys. The world around me blurred through my tears as I made my way to the parking garage. "Are you all right, ma'am?" A young security guard approached me, concern on his face. I quickly wiped my tears away. "Yes, just having a difficult day. Can I help you get to your car?" I nodded, grateful for this small kindness from a stranger when my own family had shown none. That night, sitting in the living room of my empty house, with the silence weighing like a tombstone on my shoulders, I decided to open the envelope. My fingers trembled as I broke the yellowed seal. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. I unfolded it slowly and read the words written in Michael's unmistakable handwriting. Michael's handwriting was unmistakable, that elegant script I had seen in thousands of love letters during our courtship, on birthday cards, on notes he left me in the kitchen before he went to work. But this time, the words I read took my breath away. For the woman who always truly loved me. Bank account number 8CHE23576, Swiss International Bank, Geneva. And below that, a line that made me tremble. What you find here is only the beginning. They didn't deserve to know the truth, but you do. My heart began to beat so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. A Swiss bank account? What was Michael talking about? For 45 years of marriage, he had told me everything about his businesses. Or so I thought. What secrets had he kept? What truth was it that my sons didn't deserve to know? I stayed up all night tossing and turning in bed with that piece of paper clutched to my chest. The next day, I called the bank. My shaky English was met by an operator who spoke perfectly. I gave her the account number, my personal information, and after a wait that felt like an eternity, I heard the words that changed my life forever. Mrs. Jones, the current balance in your account is 100 million United States dollars. 100 million. The phone slipped from my hands and fell to the floor. $100 million. More than 3 times what my sons had inherited combined. I sat on the kitchen floor shaking, trying to process what I had just heard. Michael had left me a secret fortune. A fortune that no one knew about. A fortune that made the 30 million from the official will look like pocket change. But that wasn't all. The operator continued after I picked up the phone. Ma'am, we also have instructions to courier you a safe deposit box that your husband deposited here 2 years ago. We can schedule the delivery. A safe deposit box. What else had Michael kept hidden? What other secrets awaited me? I accepted the delivery for the next day and hung up the phone with trembling hands. My mind was a whirlwind of questions. How had Michael acquired so much money without me noticing? Why had he kept it a secret? Why had he decided to leave it only to me? And the question that tormented me the most, what truth was it that my sons didn't deserve to know? I spent the rest of the day in a daze, moving around the house that suddenly felt different. The home we had shared for 30 years now seemed to hold secrets in every corner, in every photograph of our seemingly perfect family. I looked at the pictures of William and Daniel growing up, their graduation photos, wedding pictures, family vacations. Had I been blind to who they really were all this time? Or had something changed them? I picked up a photo from last Christmas. Michael was already sick by then, but he had insisted on the family gathering. In the photo, he sat in his favorite armchair, pale and thin, but smiling. William and Daniel stood behind him, their wives beside them, everyone smiling for the camera. But now, looking at it with new eyes, I could see the distance, the formality in their poses. We looked like a family posing for a corporate brochure, not people bound by love. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 o'clock the next morning, startling me from my thoughts. The courier was a serious man in a dark suit, looking more like a security officer than a delivery person. Mrs. Jennifer Jones? He asked formally. Yes, that's me. I have a delivery for you from Swiss International Bank. I'll need to verify your identity. After checking my ID and taking my fingerprint on an electronic device, he handed me a metal case about the size of a small microwave. It was heavier than it looked. The combination should have been communicated to you, he said. Yes, it has. Thank you. After he left, I placed the case on the dining room table and stared at it. The combination lock had 6 digits. What would Michael have chosen? Our wedding date. It had to be. I dialed 061580, June 15th, 1980. There was a satisfying click, and the lock opened. I closed the living room curtains, unplugged the phone, and sat in front of the safe with my heart racing. Inside were documents, photographs, letters, and a thick envelope with my name written in large letters. I opened it with trembling hands and began to read the most shocking letter of my life. My dearest Jennifer, the letter began. If you are reading this, it means I have passed away and our sons have shown their true colors at the reading of the will. I know they humiliated you. I know they treated you like trash. I know they laughed at you when they gave you that dusty envelope. But I needed it to happen this way. I needed them to show who they really are before you knew the truth. My hands shook harder. Michael had anticipated all of this. He had known how our sons would behave. During the last 2 years of my life, he continued, I discovered things about William and Daniel that broke my heart. Things you do not know. Things that forced me to make difficult decisions. The $100 million you found in the Swiss account are only part of my real fortune. There is more, much more. But before you know everything, you need to know the truth about our sons. My world swayed. What truth? What had Michael discovered? I continued reading, my soul on edge. William is not the successful businessman he appears to be. For 3 years, he has been siphoning money from my company to cover his gambling debts. He owes over $2 million to loan sharks, who are not exactly understanding people. Lauren doesn't know, but he has mortgaged their house twice and is about to lose it. The documents proving all this are in this box. I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach. My older son, who had always been my pride, was a compulsive gambler who had stolen from the family business. But the letter continued, and what I read about Daniel was even worse. Daniel has a cocaine addiction that he has been hiding for 5 years. He has secretly sold 3 properties I had given him to finance his habit. But the most serious thing is that he is involved with drug traffickers who are blackmailing him. They threatened to kill him if he didn't pay them $500,000 by the end of the year. The documents of his debts and the photographs proving his addiction are also in this box. Tears began to stream down my cheeks. How had I been so blind? How had I not realized that my sons were destroying their lives? Michael's letter continued, revealing darker and darker secrets. But what hurts me the most, my love, is what they plan to do with you. I heard them talking one night in my study. They thought I was asleep from the medication, but I heard every word. William told Daniel that when I died, they had to get rid of you as quickly as possible. Lauren suggested they declare you mentally incompetent and have you committed to a nursing home. Daniel said it would be easy to get a doctor to sign the necessary papers. They wanted to take your share of the inheritance and lock you away somewhere you wouldn't be an inconvenience to their plans. The paper grew damp with my tears. My own sons, my own flesh and blood. They had planned to lock me away like a sick animal to steal my money. That's why I made the decision to protect you, Michael continued. That's why I moved the bulk of my fortune to accounts only you can access. That's why I let them have the crumbs from the official will while you have access to the real inheritance. The $100 million are just the beginning, my love. There are properties in Europe, investments in Asia, accounts in tax havens. In total, more than $200 million that are now yours. But I also leave you something more valuable, the truth. And with that truth, the power to decide what to do with our sons. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the letter. $200 million. A fortune that made my son's official inheritance look like loose change. The letter ended with a sentence that was seared into my soul. You decide whether you use this information to protect yourself or to teach them a lesson they will never forget. I can no longer take care of you, but I have given you the weapons to take care of yourself. With all my eternal love, Michael. I put the letter down on the table and looked at the contents of the safe. There were photographs of Daniel using drugs, bank documents showing William's debts, contracts signed with dangerous loan sharks, audio recordings on small devices I didn't dare listen to yet. My husband had been a private detective during his last years, meticulously documenting the corruption of our own sons. And now that explosive information was in my hands. I sat in that room for hours, surrounded by photographs that destroyed the image I had of my children. Daniel with glassy eyes snorting cocaine in the bathroom of some nightclub. William signing documents with men in dark suits who were clearly not legitimate bankers. casino receipts for thousands of dollars, pawn shop tickets for items I thought they still owned. My perfect world, my exemplary family was crumbling before my eyes like a house of cards. But what hurt the most wasn't the addictions or the debts. It was the plan they had hatched to get rid of me. In one of the recordings I finally dared to listen to, I heard Lauren's voice saying, "Once she's committed, we can sell the family house and split the money. She's an old woman. She won't notice a thing." And William's reply, "Mom was always so naive. It'll be easy to convince her it's for her own good." Over the next few days, I dedicated myself to investigating every document Michael had left in that safe. He had hired private investigators to follow our sons. He had recorded phone conversations. He had photographed secret meetings. My husband had built a complete file on William and Daniel's lies and betrayals. And among all those papers, I found something that chilled my blood. A contract signed between my sons and a specialized geriatric care company. They had already paid the deposit to commit me to a place called Willow Creek Senior Living, a private nursing home 3 hours from the city. The contract was dated 2 weeks before Michael's death. They had planned to lock me away before their father even died. They had planned to rob me while I was mourning at his funeral. The phone rang one morning as I was reviewing bank documents. It was William, using that fake voice he used when he wanted something. "Mom, we need to talk. Lauren and I are worried about you. You've been very quiet since the funeral." Worried? How ironic. "I'm fine," I told him. "I just need time to process the loss." But he insisted. "It's not good for you to be alone in that big house. We've been thinking about options to make you more comfortable." There it was. The plan was beginning to unfold. "What kind of options?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Well, there are some very nice places where you can have company, activities, 24-hour medical care, places where you don't have to worry about a thing." Places like Willow Creek Senior Living, I thought, feeling rage begin to boil inside me. That same afternoon, I received another call, this time from Daniel. "Mom, William told me you spoke this morning. I think it's an excellent idea for you to consider moving somewhere more suitable for your age." His voice sounded nervous, as if he were reading from a script. "Besides," he continued, "we need to talk about finances. Dad left you the house, but the upkeep is very expensive. The taxes, the utilities, the repairs. It would be better to sell so you can live somewhere without those worries." Selling the house, of course, was part of the plan. Get rid of me and take whatever they could. "I'm in no hurry to make decisions," I replied. "We just buried your father." "But Mom," he insisted, "the longer you wait, the harder it will be. At your age, changes are complicated. It's better to act fast. At my age," as if I were a senile old woman incapable of taking care of herself. Over the following days, the calls intensified. William, Daniel, and Lauren took turns pressuring me. They would show up at my house unannounced, always with brochures for senior living facilities and arguments about my safety and well-being. "Look at this place, Mom," Lauren would say, showing me pictures of gardens and activity rooms. "They have physical therapy, painting classes, excursions. You would be so happy here." But I had researched that place. It was a gilded cage where relatives deposited inconvenient elders and forgot about them forever. The online reviews spoke of medical negligence, terrible food, and abusive staff. A perfect place for someone to slowly disappear from the world. One afternoon, while pretending to consider their suggestions, I decided to test them. "You're right," I told them during a forced family dinner. "Maybe it is time to make some changes. But first, I'd like you to help me with something." Their eyes lit up, thinking I had given in. "Of course, Mom. Whatever you need," William said with a fake smile. "I want to review all of your father's company documents. I want to understand exactly what you inherited and how the business works." The silence that followed was deafening. William and Daniel exchanged nervous glances. "Don't worry about that, Mom," Daniel said quickly. "We'll take care of everything. You don't have to bother with paperwork." But I insist, I continued. After 45 years of building that empire with your father, I have a right to know what will happen to it. Lauren chimed in with that condescending smile I hated so much. Mother-in-law, those things are very complicated. Numbers, taxes, contracts. It's better to let the men handle it while you relax in your new home. The men? As if I were a child incapable of understanding basic math. Besides, William added, we've already made some important decisions. We've sold one of the estates to pay off company debts. Sold an estate? What debts? Arthur had been dead for barely a month and they were already liquidating properties. What kind of debts? I asked. Boring stuff, Mom. Taxes, suppliers, payroll. Don't you worry about it. But I knew the truth. I knew William had used that money to pay his loan sharks. I knew they were plundering the inheritance to cover their vices. That night, alone in my house, I made a decision. I was not going to be the silent victim they expected. I was not going to let them lock me in a nursing home while they stole everything Michael and I had built together. I had $200 million. I had proof of their crimes. And I had something they had underestimated. 45 years of experience being the wife of a brilliant businessman. I had learned more than they thought. I had absorbed more knowledge than they imagined. And now it was time to use all of it to my advantage. I picked up the phone and called the Swiss bank. It was time to start moving my pieces in this deadly chess game my own sons had started. The next day, as I was having breakfast, the doorbell rang. It was an older, elegantly dressed man who introduced himself as George Maxwell, an attorney. Mrs. Jones, I'm here on behalf of your late husband. I have specific instructions to carry out. Michael had hired independent lawyers, different from Rachel, to handle his secret affairs. George handed me a thick folder full of legal documents. Your husband asked me to deliver this to you exactly 1 month after his death. These are legal powers, contracts, and authorities that will allow you to take full control of all his companies if you so choose. Full control. Michael hadn't just left me money. He had left me the keys to the kingdom. Your sons do not know these documents exist, George continued. According to your husband's instructions, you have the power to revoke their inheritances if you deem they are not meeting the family's ethical standards. George Maxwell sat in my living room and began to explain documents that seemed to come from a spy movie. Your husband was very meticulous, Mrs. Jones. These contracts grant you 51% of the shares in all the family businesses. On paper, your sons inherited control, but legally, you are the majority shareholder. My head was spinning as I tried to process the information. How is that possible? The will Rachel read. That will, George interrupted, only covered the visible assets. Your husband created a complex corporate structure where the companies are under the umbrella of a family holding company. And you, Mrs. Jones, are the owner of that holding company. Michael had been playing chess while we all thought he was playing checkers. He had built a perfect legal trap disguised as a generous inheritance for his sons. But there's more, George continued, opening another folder. Your husband also tasked me with investigating your son's activities for the last 3 years. What we discovered is enough to completely nullify their inheritances and, in some cases, to initiate criminal proceedings. He showed me photographs I had already seen in the safe, but also new documents, irregular bank transfers, fraudulent contracts, fake invoices. William has been diverting funds from the construction company to pay gambling debts. In total, he has stolen nearly $3 million. Daniel has used company vehicles to transport drugs, turning the family restaurants into money laundering centers. Each revelation was like a hammer blow to my chest. How had I raised 2 criminals without realizing it? George took out an audio recorder and played it. I immediately recognized my sons' voices. When the old lady is locked up, William was saying, we can liquidate everything and get out of the country. With $50 million each, we can start over in Europe. Daniel's voice replied, yeah, but we have to act fast. The cartel is pressuring me for the money I owe. If I don't pay them soon, they're going to start killing people. Don't worry, William continued. In 2 weeks, Mom will be committed and we'll have access to all the accounts. Rachel has already prepared the mental incapacity documents. My blood ran cold. They weren't just planning to rob me. They were planning to flee the country after destroying everything Michael had built. Your husband recorded this conversation 3 weeks before he died, George explained. That's why he accelerated all the legal preparations. He knew he had little time to protect you. He handed me a new cell phone. This device is directly connected to my office and to the police. If you feel threatened at any moment, press the red button and help will be on its way. The reality of my situation began to sink in. I wasn't just dealing with ungrateful children. I was dealing with desperate criminals who saw my death or disappearance as the solution to all their problems. What do you recommend I do? I asked him. George smiled, an expression that didn't reach his eyes. Your husband asked me to tell you this verbatim. Jennifer, you are stronger and smarter than they think. It's time they found out who they're messing with. That night after George left, I sat in front of my vanity mirror and truly looked at myself for the first time in months. I saw a 69-year-old woman with gray hair I had let grow naturally, with wrinkles that told the story of 4 decades of smiles and tears. But I also saw something I had forgotten existed: fierceness. For all those years of being the perfect wife, the selfless mother, I had buried the fighter I had been in my youth. The woman who had sold her jewelry to help Michael build his empire. The woman who had worked double shifts when money was tight. The woman who had fought against banks, suppliers, and competitors to protect her family. That woman was still there, dormant, but not dead. And it was time to wake her up. I picked up the phone and called George. I've made my decision, I told him. I want to fight back, but I need to be smart about this. They're desperate and dangerous. We need to be 1 step ahead of them at all times. I'm glad to hear it, Mrs. Jones. What would you like to do first? I thought of the recordings, the photos, the documents. I thought of the nursing home contract. I thought of my sons discussing my commitment as casually as if they were planning a vacation. First, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in years, I want to secure my safety. I want security for my home. Cameras, alarms, everything. And I want a personal security guard they don't know about. Consider it done. Anything else? Yes. I want to start transferring some of that money to local accounts I can access easily. I'll need resources for what's coming. A wise decision. I'll arrange it first thing tomorrow. And one more thing, George. I want to learn everything about the businesses, the real situation, not just what my sons have been telling me. I want to know every asset, every liability, every employee. I want to know who's loyal to them and who might be loyal to me. There was respect in George's voice when he replied, Your husband was right about you, Mrs. Jones. You're a force to be reckoned with when you set your mind to something. They're about to find that out the hard way, I said, and for the first time since Michael's death, I felt a sense of purpose burning inside me. As I hung up the phone, I looked at Michael's photograph on my nightstand. You gave me the weapons, I whispered to his smiling image. Now I'll use them to protect everything we built together. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows of the house my sons wanted to sell from under me. A storm was coming, but this time I wouldn't be caught unprepared. They thought they were dealing with a helpless old woman. They were about to meet Jennifer Jones, and she was anything but helpless. Friday morning arrived with a pounding on my front door that seemed deliberately intimidating. When I checked the newly installed security camera on my phone, I saw William standing there with Lauren and a thin man in a white shirt and tie who I didn't recognize. I took a deep breath, slipped my new emergency phone into my pocket, and opened the door. Mom! William's voice was artificially cheerful. We were getting worried when you didn't answer our calls yesterday. I had indeed ignored their calls on George's advice. Let them get nervous, he'd suggested. Let them make the first move. I was busy, I said simply, not inviting them in. Well, we've brought someone to meet you, William continued, gesturing to the thin man. This is Dr. Evans. He specializes in geriatric care. We thought it would be good for him to give you a quick checkup. Dr. Evans extended his hand. Mrs. Jones, it's a pleasure to meet you. Your children are concerned about your well-being. I looked at his hand but didn't take it. Instead, I studied his face. There was something disingenuous in his eyes that confirmed my suspicions. I don't need a checkup, I replied firmly. I saw my regular doctor just 2 weeks ago. William stepped forward. Mom, please, let's not make this difficult. Dr. Evans is one of the best in his field. He just wants to talk to you. Lauren's smile was plastic and didn't reach her eyes. Mother-in-law, at your age, it's important to have regular checkups. The doctor just wants to ask you a few simple questions. Simple questions like the ones used to declare someone mentally incompetent. I knew their game now. Fine, I said, surprising them with my compliance. Come in. They exchanged quick glances of victory as I led them to the living room. What they didn't know was that George had installed hidden cameras there just yesterday, and everything was being recorded. The supposed doctor sat across from me and opened his briefcase. He took out a form I recognized immediately from the documents in Michael's safe. It was a preliminary mental competency evaluation. Mrs. Jones, he began in a syrupy voice, I'd just like to assess how you're doing. These are routine procedures. He clicked his pen and smiled. Can you tell me what day it is today? Friday, October 13th, I replied calmly. And can you tell me where you live? In the house I built with my husband 30 years ago at 1247 Oak Avenue. Very good, he said, making a note. Then he looked up. Do you remember how much money you inherited in the will? There was the trap. If I said I had only inherited a dusty envelope, it would confirm I had no resources and would be easier to declare incompetent. If I mentioned the $200 million, they would think I was delusional. I looked directly into William's eyes. I remember perfectly that you inherited $30 million in companies and properties. I also remember that I received an envelope that you considered trash. The doctor scribbled something on his papers. William smiled, thinking I had fallen into his trap. And how do you feel about that distribution? The doctor asked. I feel, I said slowly, like a woman who finally understands who the members of her family really are. William and Lauren exchanged satisfied glances. They thought I was admitting confusion or resentment, emotions they could use to justify my commitment. The fake doctor closed his folder and whispered something to William. Then he turned to me. Mrs. Jones, I believe it would be beneficial for you to spend a few days under medical observation. We have a very comfortable facility where you can rest while we evaluate your general condition. There it was, the final trap. No, thank you, I replied with the firmest voice I could muster. I feel perfectly capable of taking care of myself. But Mom, William said, and for the first time there was a real note of threat in his voice. It's not a suggestion. The doctor believes you need specialized care. The doctor, I replied, rising slowly, can believe whatever he wants, but this is my house, and I decide who comes in and who goes out. At that moment, Lauren made the mistake I had been waiting for. She approached me with that venomous smile and said, Mother-in-law, don't be difficult. We all know you can't take care of yourself anymore. It's time you accept reality and let the adults make the important decisions. The adults, as if I were a child, as if 45 years of marriage and building an empire had taught me nothing about life. I looked at William, at Lauren, at the fake doctor, and I smiled for the first time in weeks. It was a smile they had never seen before, a smile that would have made Michael proud. You're right, I said softly. It is time for the adults to make the important decisions, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I took out my cell phone, the one George had given me, and pressed the record button. I want to be very clear about what is happening here, I said in a firm voice as I recorded them. My son William, my daughter-in-law Lauren, and this supposed doctor are trying to force me into a facility against my will. The fake doctor immediately grew nervous. Ma'am, this is just a routine medical evaluation. Routine? I answered, keeping the phone pointed at them. Is it routine to come to my house unannounced? Is it routine to bring commitment papers already filled out? William tried to snatch the phone from me. Mom, put that thing away. You're acting irrational. On the contrary, I said, stepping away from him. I'm behaving exactly as a woman should who discovered her own family plans to lock her away to steal her inheritance. William's expression changed completely. The mask of the concerned son fell away, and for the first time I saw his true face. Cold, calculating, dangerous. We don't know what you're talking about, Lauren said, but her voice trembled. I'm talking, I continued, pulling one of the photographs Michael had left in the safe from my purse. About this. It was a picture of William leaving a casino at 3 o'clock in the morning, clearly drunk, accompanied by 2 men who were obviously not legitimate businessmen. I'm talking about the gambling debts. I'm talking about the money stolen from the company. I'm talking about the contract you already signed with Willow Creek to have me committed. The silence that followed was deafening. The fake doctor started backing toward the door. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'll be leaving. Not so fast, doctor, I said, blocking his path. How much did they pay you to sign false documents of mental incapacity? The man turned pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about this, I said, showing him another photograph where he appeared receiving an envelope of money from William. My husband hired private investigators during his final months. He documented every dirty move you made. Lauren began to cry, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure panic. Mother-in-law, you don't understand. Everything we've done has been for your own good. For my good? I repeated, feeling a rage give me a strength I hadn't felt in years. Stealing from the family business is for my good. Planning to flee the country with the money is for my good? William finally lost his composure. Enough! You're a crazy old woman who doesn't know what she's talking about. Dad made a mistake leaving you anything. You're too stupid to handle money. There it was, the truth. After 45 years of pretending to love me, he finally showed what he really thought of me. Stupid? I asked, taking out my phone and dialing a number. George, it's Jennifer. They're here, just as you predicted. Yes, I've recorded everything. William tried to take the phone from me again, but this time I didn't back down. If you touch me, I said in a voice I didn't recognize as my own, it will be the last thing you do as a free man. What do you mean? Lauren asked, her voice cracking. I mean, I replied, that right now, 3 criminal lawyers are reviewing evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Just then the doorbell rang. It was 2 police officers accompanied by George. Mrs. Jones, one of the officers said, we received your emergency call. William and Lauren looked at each other in absolute terror. The fake doctor tried to sneak out, but George stopped him. Dr. Evans, or should I say Mr. Howard, because you aren't a doctor, are you? The man slumped into a chair. They paid me $5,000 to sign some papers. I didn't know it was illegal. $5,000 to declare me mentally incompetent? I asked. Is that what my freedom is worth? The police began taking statements while George explained to me that this had been a controlled operation from the moment Michael died. Your husband anticipated every move, George told me as the officers arrested the fake doctor. He knew they would try to have you committed quickly before you could react. That's why he prepared all this evidence in these legal proceedings. William and Lauren weren't arrested that day, but the police warned them they were under investigation. When they finally left, my house was silent for the first time in weeks. I sat in my favorite armchair, the same one where Michael and I used to watch television together, and I cried. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. For the first time since my husband's death, I felt truly free. That night, I called both of my sons. Not to plead or to try to fix things. I called them to give them an ultimatum. William answered on the first ring. Mom, what happened today was a misunderstanding. Stop lying, William, I cut him off. I know everything. The gambling debts, the money you stole from the company, everything. There was a long silence. How did you— Your father knew. He hired investigators. He documented everything, including your plan to have me committed. William's voice changed, becoming defensive. Dad didn't understand. I got into some trouble, but I had it under control. $3 million in gambling debts is not under control, William. Neither is stealing from the family business or planning to lock your mother away in a nursing home. Another silence. What do you want? You have 24 hours to return every penny you stole from the family businesses. You have 24 hours to cancel the contract with Willow Creek, and you have 24 hours to confess the entire truth about your debts and your problems. Or what? William asked with a defiant tone that no longer intimidated me. Or tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning, 3 local newspapers will publish the full story of your crimes. Or I hand all the evidence over to the district attorney's office. Or I use the legal powers your father left me to completely revoke your inheritance. The silence on the other end of the line confirmed that he finally understood who he was dealing with. Impossible, he muttered. Dad left us everything in the will. You can't take what's already ours. Want to bet? I replied. And for the first time in my life, my voice sounded exactly like Michael's when he was closing a tough deal. Because it turns out your father was a lot smarter than you thought, and I'm a lot stronger than you imagined. I hung up before he could answer. I didn't need to hear any more lies, more excuses, more manipulation. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Daniel. Mom? His voice was shaky. William just called me. What's going on? Is it true about the evidence? Every word, Daniel. Your father knew about the cocaine. He knew about the drug traffickers. He knew everything. I heard him exhale sharply. Mom, I can explain. You can explain to the police, Daniel. Or you can take this one chance I'm offering you. The same deal I gave William. 24 hours to come clean, return what you've stolen, and start making amends. Otherwise, I'll have no choice but to let justice take its course. You wouldn't, he said, but there was no conviction in his voice. We're your sons. And I was your mother, I replied, surprised at the steadiness in my voice despite the pain in my heart. That didn't stop you from planning to lock me away and steal everything I helped build. I heard a sob on the other end of the line. I've made terrible mistakes, Mom. The drugs. They took over everything. I didn't mean for it to go this far. For a moment, I felt my resolve weaken. This was my son, my baby boy who once ran to me with skinned knees and broken toys. But then I remembered the recordings, his cold voice discussing my commitment as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience. You have 24 hours, Daniel. Use them wisely. I hung up, my hand trembling slightly. I had done it. I had confronted them both. Now I could only wait to see what they would do. The next morning at 8 o'clock sharp, William and Daniel appeared at my door. I watched them on the security camera before letting them in. They looked terrible, haggard, unshaven, with dark circles under their eyes. Mom, William began as soon as they entered, we need to talk. I led them to the living room but didn't offer them coffee or a smile. I left them standing in the middle of the room while I remained seated in my armchair, in the position of power I had earned. Talk, I said simply. Daniel started to cry. Mom, everything got out of control. The drugs, the debts, the loan sharks. We didn't know how to stop. And your solution was to rob me and lock me away? I asked. That wasn't the original intention, William muttered. At first, we just needed to borrow some money. We thought we could pay it back before anyone noticed. But things got worse, Daniel continued. The cartel started threatening us. They said if we didn't pay, they would go after the family. So you decided to hurt me first, I replied. You decided it was better to lock me up like an animal than to face the consequences of your choices. William knelt in front of my chair. Mom, we're your sons. We love you. We just made terrible mistakes. You love me? I asked, feeling all the rage that had built up for months finally find its voice. You call planning my commitment love. You call stealing the money your father and I built together love. You call treating me like trash at the will reading love. They didn't answer because there was no possible answer to those questions. But I want you to know something, I continued, standing slowly and walking to the window. Your father loved you. Despite everything he discovered, despite all the evidence he gathered against you, he loved you. That's why he left you a chance to redeem yourselves. I turned to face them. He left you $30 million, enough to pay all your debts and start over. But he also left me the power to take it away if you proved you didn't deserve it. Their faces paled as they understood the magnitude of what I was saying. What do you want us to do? William asked, his voice cracking. I smiled, but it wasn't a motherly smile. It was the smile of a woman who had finally found her power. What I want, I said, walking slowly around my two sons, kneeling in my living room, is for you to understand that the game has changed. For 69 years, I have been the obedient wife, the sacrificial mother, the invisible woman who cleans up others' messes. That's over. I looked them directly in the eyes, one by one. William, I want you to call all your loan sharks right now and tell them they will get their money, but not from the money stolen from the company. They will get it from your own inheritance. His face fell. Mom, if I do that, I'll have nothing left. The debts are more than $3 million. Exactly, I replied, showing not a shred of compassion. You'll be left with exactly what you deserve after stealing from the family business for 3 years. Daniel, I continued, turning to my younger son, you are going to check into a rehabilitation center, not one of those luxury places where the rich go to pretend they're getting better. A real place where they will work with you. Seriously. Mom, I can quit on my own. I don't need rehab, he protested. How are you able to quit gambling on your own? I asked William. How are you able to stop stealing money on your own? No, my sons, addicts don't get better on their own. And you are going to get better. Or you are going to lose everything. Daniel began to cry harder. They'll kill me in rehab. No, I said, taking out my phone. They won't kill you because I'm going to pay them myself. But every dollar I pay for your debts will be deducted from your inheritance. I dialed a number I had written down days ago. Detective Miller, this is Jennifer Jones. I have information about a drug trafficking ring operating out of the family's restaurants. Daniel went white as a sheet. Mom, what are you doing? I'm cleaning up the mess you created, I replied, speaking into the phone. Yes, detective. I have names, dates, photographs, and my son is willing to cooperate as a protected witness. I hung up and looked at Daniel. You are going to testify against the cartel. You are going to give the police all the information you have about their operation, and you are going to do it before you enter rehab. They'll kill me if I do that, he muttered. They'll kill you if you don't pay, I replied. At least this way you have a chance to live and start over. William tried to stand, but I stopped him with a look. I'm not finished with you. I took the documents George had given me from my bag. Did you know that your father left me in control of all the family businesses? Did you know that I can legally fire you right now? Panic filled his eyes. Mom, that company is all I know how to do. It's my life. It was your life, I corrected him, until you decided to turn it into your personal cash register. I showed him the financial statements the forensic accountant had prepared. $3 million stolen over 3 years. Fake invoices, irregular transfers, ghost accounts. Do you know what this is? This is evidence of a federal crime. But there's a way to resolve this without involving the DA's office, I continued, seeing hope light up in his eyes. You are going to sign your resignation as CEO of all companies. You are going to transfer all of your shares to me, and you are going to work as a common laborer, earning a basic wage until you have paid back every penny you stole. A laborer? He asked, incredulous. You're going to start from the bottom, just like your father did. You're going to carry bricks. You're going to clean offices. You're going to do the work that real working men do every day. And you're going to learn what it means to earn money honestly. The humiliation on his face was evident, but there was something else, too. Respect. For the first time in years, he was seeing me as more than a harmless old woman. Lauren, who had been quiet throughout the conversation, finally spoke. "Mother-in-law, this is ridiculous. They can't accept these conditions. They're your sons." I turned to her with a smile that could freeze blood. "Oh, really? And what are your options, my dear daughter-in-law?" I took another photograph from my bag. It was Lauren kissing a young man in a hotel parking lot. "Should I tell William about your affair with the yoga instructor, or would you prefer to tell him yourself?" Her face fell completely. "Or would you prefer I tell him about the $50,000 you've been siphoning from the family account to buy yourself clothes and jewelry?" William looked at his wife with an expression of absolute betrayal. "What is my mother talking about?" "Your wife," I continued, savoring every second of her discomfort, "has been stealing from you for 2 years, and she's been sleeping with Rick, the yoga instructor from the gym, for 6 months. Lauren started to deny everything, but I pulled out more photographs. "Do you want me to keep showing evidence, or are you going to confess the truth to your husband?" William stood up slowly, looking at Lauren as if seeing her for the first time. "Is it true?" she cried, but she didn't deny anything else. "Why?" he asked. "Because," I answered for her, "she thought that when you inherited, she would have access to millions of dollars. She planned to stay with you until she had enough money to divorce you and take half." "This can't be happening," William muttered, holding his head in his hands. "Oh, but it is happening," I said, feeling more powerful than I had in decades. "And we're just getting started." I pulled the last document from my bag. "This is a divorce agreement my lawyer prepared. Lauren is going to sign it now without asking for a single penny in the division of assets, because if she doesn't sign it, all these photographs will appear in the newspaper tomorrow, along with the evidence of her theft." "You can't make me sign anything," Lauren said, but her voice was trembling. "Can't I?" I asked, dialing another number on my phone. "Hello, Rick. This is Jennifer Jones, William's mother." Lauren lunged at me, trying to grab the phone. "Stop! He's married. His wife doesn't know anything." "Exactly," I said, moving away from her. "And unless you sign this divorce immediately, she's going to know everything." I hung up and held out a pen to her. "You have 30 seconds to decide." Lauren signed the document with trembling hands, crying inconsolably. William looked at her as if she were a stranger. "Very well," I sassy said, putting the signed document away. "Now get out of my house and never come back. If I see you near this family again, I will make good on my threat to call Rick's wife." Lauren ran out without another word, leaving me alone with my 2 defeated sons, sitting on my living room floor like punished children. The next day, I called George to set the next phase of my plan in motion. William had agreed to resign as CEO and work as a laborer in the construction company. Daniel had agreed to enter rehab and cooperate with the authorities against the drug cartel. But I wasn't naive. I knew promises made under duress could be broken as soon as the pressure eased. I needed to ensure they followed through. "I want to visit the companies," I told George. "All of them. I want to meet the employees, see the real situation for myself." "That's a great idea," he replied. "When do you want to start?" "Today," I said firmly. 2 hours later, I stood at the entrance of the main construction company headquarters. It was a modern building that Michael had designed himself 15 years ago. I hadn't been there in at least 5 years. I wore a gray pantsuit I had bought specially for the occasion. It felt strange to dress for business after decades of being the supportive wife in the background. But it also felt right. The receptionist didn't recognize me at first. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked politely. "I own this building," I replied with a smile. "I'm Jennifer Jones, Michael Jones's wife." Her eyes widened. "Mrs. Jones? I'm so sorry. We weren't expecting you. Let me call Mr. William right away. William no longer works here, I said calmly. Please gather all the department heads in the conference room. I'd like to address them. The confusion on her face was evident, but she did as I asked. 30 minutes later, I stood in front of 12 confused executives, most of whom I recognized from company events but had never spoken to professionally. Good morning, I began. For those who don't know me, I'm Jennifer Jones, Michael's wife and the new majority owner of this company. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. An older man whom I recognized as Frank Thompson, the construction supervisor, raised his hand. Mrs. Jones, with all due respect, we were told that William had inherited control of the company. That was the official story, I replied. But the reality is more complex. My husband left me controlling interest in all the family businesses through a holding company structure. As of today, I am taking direct control of operations until we can sort out some irregularities. I saw worried glances exchanged across the table. These people had worked closely with William. Some might have been aware of or even complicit in his fraudulent activities. Mrs. Jones, Frank continued, his tone skeptical. Do you have experience running a construction company? It was a fair question, and I had prepared the answer for days. Frank, I replied. For 45 years, I sat at the kitchen table with Michael every night while he told me about every project, every problem, every important decision. For 45 years, I reviewed contracts, listened to phone calls, participated in business strategies. The difference is that now, instead of advising from the shadows, I will be leading from the front. Several employees nodded in approval. They had seen my dedication to the family for decades. There are changes that will be implemented immediately, I continued. First, we are going to conduct a full audit of all finances from the last 3 years. I want to know exactly where every dollar went. I saw some of the accountants exchange nervous glances. They probably knew about William's irregularities, but had remained silent out of fear or loyalty. Second, we will implement a bonus system based on real productivity, not favoritism. Third, any employee who has information about past irregular activities can come speak with me privately without consequences to help me clean up this company. The tension in the room was palpable. Some people looked relieved, others worried. And fourth, I continued, raising my hand to stop the murmurs, the minimum wage at this company will increase by 30% effective immediately. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, the applause began. These workers had watched William spend money on luxury cars and expensive trips while they struggled to make ends meet. Now they had a boss who understood what it meant to work hard for every dollar. As the meeting dispersed, Frank approached me. Mrs. Jones, I need to speak with you privately. I followed him to his office, a simple space with blueprints and safety certificates on the walls. I need to know, he said once the door was closed. Is this really you taking over, or is this some temporary arrangement until William returns? This is permanent, Frank. William will be working here, but as a laborer, not as management. He has to earn his way back, if he ever does. Frank nodded slowly. Good, because I've been with this company for 25 years, and the last 3 under William have been the worst. The man doesn't understand construction. He doesn't respect the workers. He cuts corners on safety to save money. I want to know everything, Frank. Every problem, every irregularity, every concern. For the next hour, Frank outlined a distressing pattern of mismanagement, safety violations, and financial irregularities under William's leadership. Projects were behind schedule. Quality had suffered. Morale was at an all-time low. We used to be the best in the business, Frank concluded. Michael built this company on quality and integrity. William has been destroying that legacy piece by piece. Not anymore, I assured him. I'm going to need your help to turn things around. Frank's weathered face broke into a smile. Mrs. Jones, you have my complete support. And I think I speak for most of the long-time employees when I say we're glad to have a Jones in charge, who actually cares about the company. As I left the building that afternoon, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger at what William had done to Michael's beloved company. Sadness that I hadn't been more involved earlier. But mostly, I felt a growing sense of purpose and determination. This was just the beginning. I still had to visit the restaurant chain and the other businesses. I had to establish my authority everywhere, find trustworthy allies, and start rebuilding what my sons had nearly destroyed. It would be a long road, but for the first time since Michael's death, I felt like I was walking in the right direction. The next day, I visited the flagship restaurant of our chain, Jones Grill, in downtown. Unlike the construction company, where Frank had been a valuable ally, I immediately sensed hostility from the restaurant management. The manager, Robert Clark, had been hired by Daniel 3 years ago. He was a slick man in his 40s with carefully styled hair and an expensive watch that seemed too flashy for a restaurant manager's salary. "Mrs. Jones," he said with forced politeness when I arrived. "This is unexpected. Daniel usually calls ahead when there are visits from family." "I'm not here as family," I replied. "I'm here as the majority owner of this establishment." His smile faltered. "I'm afraid there must be some misunderstanding. Daniel owns this restaurant chain." "No, Mr. Clark. My son was given operational control, but I own 51% of the shares. And I'm here to understand exactly what's been happening in my restaurants." I spent the next few hours reviewing the books, inspecting the kitchen, and talking to staff. What I found was deeply troubling. The financial records showed inconsistencies even worse than what Michael had documented. Ingredients were being ordered at inflated prices from suppliers I didn't recognize. Large cash transactions were poorly documented. When I asked to see the employee records, Clark became visibly nervous. "Those are kept at corporate headquarters. I don't have access to them here." "That's not how my husband ran things," I replied. "Every restaurant should have complete records on site." "Daniel changed many of your husband's policies," Clark said, a hint of defensiveness in his voice. "He modernized operations." "Modernized," I repeated skeptically, "or obscured." By late afternoon, I had seen enough to know that Daniel's drug connections had deeply infiltrated the restaurant operations. Several staff members avoided eye contact when I asked certain questions. Others seemed afraid. I was preparing to leave when a young waitress approached me cautiously. "Mrs. Jones, could I speak with you privately? My name is Tanya. I've worked here for 5 years." I followed her to a quiet corner of the empty dining room. "What I'm about to tell you could get me fired," she said, nervously glancing around. "But Mr. Michael was always good to me, and I think you should know." She told me about late-night meetings in the closed restaurant, about packages changing hands, about how certain special customers would come in after hours and never actually eat, just meet with Daniel or Clark in the private dining room. "Last month," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I overheard Clark talking on the phone about cleaning the books before some audit. He said something about routing deliveries through shell companies to hide the real suppliers." This confirmed my worst suspicions. The restaurants weren't just being mismanaged. They were being used as fronts for money laundering and possibly drug distribution. "Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate your courage in telling me this." "Mrs. Jones, be careful," she warned. "These people, they're not just businessmen. They can be dangerous." I nodded, the weight of the situation sinking in. This wasn't just about saving the family businesses anymore. This was about dismantling a criminal operation that had taken root within them. As I was leaving, Clark approached me with a too friendly smile. "I hope your visit was informative, Mrs. Jones. Please give my regards to Daniel." "Oh, I will," I assured him. "And Mr. Clark, I suggest you update your resume. Changes are coming to this establishment very soon." His smile vanished, replaced by a cold stare. "Mrs. Jones, I don't think you understand how things work now. Daniel and I have an arrangement that's been very profitable for everyone involved." "Profitable for whom?" I asked pointedly. Because from what I've seen today, it's not profitable for the legitimate business. Clark stepped closer, lowering his voice. Let me give you some friendly advice. You're a 69-year-old widow who knows nothing about the restaurant business. Go home, enjoy your retirement, and leave the companies to those who know how to run them. I met his gaze without flinching. Let me give you some advice in return, Mr. Clark. I'm a 69-year-old widow who just discovered that criminals have infiltrated my family's businesses. I have nothing to lose and everything to gain by cleaning house completely, so perhaps you should be the one to reconsider your position. I walked away, my heart pounding, but my resolve stronger than ever. I had encountered my first real opposition, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. The people Daniel had brought into the business had too much to lose if I took control. As I drove home, my phone rang. It was George. Jennifer, I've been trying to reach you. There's a problem at the rehab center. What happened? Daniel checked in as agreed, but he's demanding to leave. He says he made a mistake and doesn't need inpatient treatment. The center called me because you're listed as the responsible party. I sighed. He's running scared. Tell them to keep him there, even if they have to sedate him. I'll be there first thing tomorrow. There's more, George continued. William showed up for his first day at the construction site, but he caused a scene. He refused to do the manual labor assigned to him, claiming it was beneath his dignity. Frank had to escort him off the property. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. They're testing me. They think I'll back down if they resist. What do you want to do? George asked. Set up meetings for me with both of them tomorrow, separately. It's time for them to understand that I'm not making empty threats. That night I sat alone in my study, reviewing everything I had learned that day. The situation was worse than I had imagined. My sons hadn't just been irresponsible. They had allowed criminal elements to infiltrate our legitimate businesses. I took out Michael's picture and looked at his smiling face. You knew, didn't you? You knew how bad it had gotten. That's why you set all this up. I could almost hear his voice in my head. You always were the stronger one, Jen. I just built the businesses. You built our family. Now you need to save them both. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart but a clear purpose. My sons were resisting change, clinging to their destructive patterns. Tomorrow, I would have to be tougher than I had ever been in my life. As I drifted off to sleep, I wondered, could I really do what needed to be done? Could I be harsh enough to save my children from themselves? The thought was terrifying, but the alternative, watching them destroy themselves and everything Michael had built, was unthinkable. The morning light streamed through my bedroom window, waking me before my alarm. I hadn't slept well. The confrontations ahead weighed heavily on my mind. I was about to face the most difficult day since Michael's death. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit, professional, authoritative, but still me. Not trying to be Michael, but channeling his strength while finding my own. My first stop was the rehabilitation center where Daniel had checked himself in, only to demand release less than 24 hours later. It was a modern facility outside the city, surrounded by peaceful gardens. Despite its beauty, it had an excellent reputation for serious treatment, not a luxury spa disguised as therapy. Doctor. Martinez, the medical director, met me in her office. Mrs. Jones, I'm afraid your son is not being cooperative. He's demanding to leave, claiming he was coerced into coming here. Was he under the influence when he arrived? I asked. Yes, she admitted. His initial blood test showed cocaine in his system. But once it began to wear off, he became agitated, insisting he doesn't have a problem. I need to see him, I said. She led me to a private room where Daniel paced anxiously. When he saw me, his face contorted with anger. Mom! Thank God you're here. You need to sign me out. This was a mistake. I don't need to be locked up with real addicts. I sat down calmly. Real addicts, Daniel? Like the man who tested positive for cocaine on arrival? Like the man who sold family properties to finance his habit? Like the man who's gotten involved with drug cartels to keep his supply coming? His face flushed. That's not fair. I just like to party sometimes. I can stop whenever I want. Then why haven't you? I asked simply. Because I didn't want to. But now I do. I'll stop on my own. I don't need this place. I took out my phone and showed him a photograph from Michael's files. Daniel unconscious at a nightclub, white powder visible on his nose. This is from 2 years ago, Daniel. Your father knew. He watched you destroy yourself and tried to protect you as long as he could. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Dad knew? Why didn't he say anything? Because you were already hiding things from us. You were already choosing the drugs over your family. He thought if he confronted you directly, he'd lose you completely. I showed him more photos. Daniel meeting with known drug dealers. Daniel selling a property that was supposed to be a family legacy. This isn't occasional partying, son. This is addiction, and it's going to kill you if you don't get help. He collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. It's too late, Mom. The people I owe, they're not just going to let this go. If I testify against them, they'll kill me. That's why you need to stay here, I explained. This facility has security, and the police are arranging protection for you as a cooperating witness. It's your only chance, Daniel. I took his trembling hands in mine. Despite everything, my heart ached for him. This was my son, my child. Seeing him in such pain was almost unbearable. I'm scared, Mom, he whispered, suddenly sounding like the little boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. I know, I said softly, but I'm not abandoning you. I'm going to fight for you, Daniel. Not for the man who planned to lock me away, but for the son I raised. The son I know is still in there somewhere. He looked up, his eyes red from crying. What if I'm not strong enough? Then I'll be strong enough for both of us, I promised. But you have to commit to this program. Completely. No half measures. After a long moment, he nodded. Okay, I'll try. Really try this time. I hugged him tightly, feeling a cautious hope. This wasn't a victory yet, but it was a start. Dr. Martinez was waiting outside. He's agreed to stay, I told her, but he'll need the strongest program you have, and security is essential. There are people who might try to harm him. We understand, she assured me. We've worked with witnesses before. He'll be safe here, and we'll do everything we can to help him recover. My next stop was more challenging, confronting William at the construction site. I had asked Frank to have him working on the foundation of a new project. Hard, physical labor far from the executive office he was used to. When I arrived, Frank met me with a grim expression. He's been complaining all morning, trying to boss around the other workers, refusing to follow instructions. The crew is about ready to walk off the job. Where is he now? Frank pointed to a corner of the site where William sat alone, still in expensive loafers, completely unsuited for construction work, defiantly checking his phone instead of working. I walked over, mud from the site sticking to my sensible shoes. William looked up with undisguised contempt. Come to see the humiliation, Mother. Enjoying the show? I came to see if you were keeping our agreement, I replied evenly. Clearly you're not. This is ridiculous, he spat. I'm an executive, not a day laborer. You can't seriously expect me to do this work. Every man on this site does this work, I countered. Men who have families to feed. Men with more honor in their calloused hands than you have in your entire body. William stood up, towering over me. I built this company into what it is today. You nearly destroyed it, I corrected him. $3 million stolen. Safety regulations ignored. Contracts unfulfilled. Frank has shown me everything, William. Your father's company was thriving before you took over. Now it's hanging by a thread. So fire me, he challenged. Let me walk away. Is that what you want? To walk away from your responsibilities? From the mess you've created? He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. What I want is my life back. My real life. Your real life was built on theft and lies, I said firmly. That life is over. Now you have two choices. Work here honestly, learn the business from the ground up like your father did, or face criminal charges for what you've done." William's face reddened with anger. "You wouldn't press charges against your own son." "Try me," I replied, my voice deadly serious. "Test my resolve one more time, William, and find out exactly how far I'm willing to go." We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "What about Lauren?" he asked quietly. "Is it true? About the affair?" I softened slightly. Despite everything, the pain in his eyes was real. Finding out about Lauren's betrayal had wounded him deeply. "Yes," I said gently. "I'm sorry, but it's true. She was using you, William, just like you were using me." He winced at the comparison. "I never meant for things to go this far," he murmured. "The gambling. It started small, just for fun. Then I started losing. Big losses. I borrowed to cover them, thinking I'd win it back, but I never did." "Addiction never stays small," I observed. "Whether it's gambling, drugs, or power, it always grows until it consumes everything." William looked at the construction site around us, at the men working honestly for their pay. For the first time, I saw a flicker of shame in his eyes. "I don't know if I can do this, Mom," he admitted. "I don't know if I can be the person you and Dad wanted me to be." "I don't need you to be perfect," I told him. "I just need you to be honest, to take responsibility, to earn back what you've lost, not just in money, but in trust." Frank approached cautiously. "Mrs. Jones, the crew foreman needs to speak with William about today's assignments, if he's staying." I looked at my son questioningly. This was his moment to choose. After a long pause, William nodded. "I'm staying." He looked down at his inappropriate shoes and designer clothes. "But I'll need proper work clothes and boots. I can't work like this." "We have extras in the supply trailer," Frank said, a hint of approval in his voice. "And there's a crew meeting in 5 minutes. Don't be late." As Frank walked away, William turned to me. "I'm going to hate every minute of this, you know." "Maybe at first," I acknowledged. "But your father started exactly where you are now, carrying bricks, mixing cement, learning the business from the foundation up. It made him the man he was." "He never told me that," William said thoughtfully, "because he wanted to spare you the hardship he endured. But now I think that might have been a mistake. Some lessons can only be learned through struggle." I watched as William walked toward the supply trailer, his expensive suit already stained with dirt. It wasn't a complete transformation, far from it, but it was a step in the right direction. As I drove away from the construction site, my phone rang. It was George. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better than expected," I replied. "Daniel is staying in rehab, and William is at least going through the motions of working on the site. That's good news, but we have another problem. I've been reviewing the restaurant financials, and the situation is worse than we thought. Robert Clark has been running what amounts to a money laundering operation through the restaurants, and he's not working alone." "What do you mean?" "He has at least 3 other managers involved across different locations. They're all loyal to Daniel, not to the company, and they're nervous now that you're taking control." I remembered Clark's veiled threat. "How dangerous do you think these people are?" George hesitated before answering. "Dangerous enough that I've arranged for additional security at your home, effective immediately. Jennifer, these aren't just white-collar criminals. If they're laundering money for drug cartels, they won't hesitate to protect their interests." A chill ran down my spine. What should we do? The police want to use the restaurants to set up a sting operation. With your permission, of course. They'd monitor activities, gather evidence, and then conduct simultaneous raids on all locations. Would that put my employees at risk? The innocent ones? There would be some disruption, George admitted. But the police would focus on the management level where the criminal activity is concentrated. I thought of Tanya, the brave waitress who had spoken up. Do it, but make sure my legitimate employees are protected, both physically and financially. I want them to know their jobs are secure. I'll arrange it, George promised. One more thing. The forensic accountants found something interesting in Michael's personal files. It appears he was working on a major reorganization of the companies before he died. Something he called Project Legacy. Does that mean anything to you? I frowned. No, he never mentioned it to me. Well, whatever it was, he put a lot of work into it. There are hundreds of pages of notes, projections, and legal documents. I'll have them brought to your house so you can review them. After hanging up, I sat in my car for a long moment, processing everything. The situation with the restaurants was even more serious than I'd realized. My confrontations with my sons had gone better than expected, but their paths to redemption would be long and uncertain. And now there was this mysterious Project Legacy to investigate. What had Michael been planning in secret, beyond the measures he'd taken to protect me? As I drove home, I caught sight of myself in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at me was not the same one who had received that dusty envelope just weeks ago. There was a determination in her eyes, a confidence in her bearing that hadn't been there before. I was changing, evolving into someone stronger than I'd ever imagined I could be. The question was, could my sons change too? Could they find their way back from the dark paths they'd chosen? Only time would tell. But for now, I had a family empire to save and a mystery to solve. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of activity and transformation. The police sting operation at the restaurants had been successful beyond expectations, resulting in the arrest of Robert Clark and 4 other managers, along with several drug cartel associates. The evidence Daniel provided as a cooperating witness had been crucial to building the case. The construction company was slowly regaining its reputation under my leadership, with Frank's invaluable assistance. William, to everyone's surprise, including my own, had stuck with the physical labor much longer than I had expected. After 3 months of carrying bricks and digging foundations, he had been promoted to assistant foreman, not because of his name, but because he had actually earned it. Today marked an important milestone. The official launch of the Michael and Jennifer Jones Foundation for Vulnerable Women, a project I had been developing in secret for months. I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom, adjusting the gold dress I had chosen for the occasion. Not because it was the most expensive in my closet, but because it was the color of strength, the color of the power I had discovered within myself. As I put on the earrings Michael had given me for our 20th anniversary, I thought about everything that had changed since that night I opened the dusty envelope my sons had despised. The foundation had already helped over 200 older women in its first few months of quiet operation before tonight's official launch. Women like Rose, 73, whose children had emptied her bank account and left her living in deplorable conditions. Like Carmen, 68, who had been a victim of domestic violence for decades and finally found the courage to escape. Like Patricia, 75, whose family had tried to declare her mentally incompetent to steal her pension. Every story I heard reminded me how close I had come to becoming one of those victims, and every woman we helped confirmed that I had made the right decisions. The phone rang as I finished getting ready. It was William. Over these 6 months, our conversations had slowly evolved from hostility to something resembling mutual respect. "Mom," he said, and his voice sounded different, more mature. "I wanted to wish you luck at the launch tonight." "Thank you," I replied, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. "How are things at the construction site?" "Good," he answered. "We finished the affordable housing project you proposed today, seeing the families move into their new homes. I get why Dad loved this business." It was true. I had turned part of the construction company into a project for low-income housing. It was profitable, but it also had a social purpose that filled my heart. "Mom," William continued, "I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but can I come to the launch tonight?" The question took me by surprise. For months, I had kept my sons away from my new projects, not as punishment, but because I needed space to discover who I was without them. "Why do you want to come?" I asked. "Because," he said, and I heard real emotion in his voice, "I'm proud of you. Because I want people to know that I'm your son. because for 35 years I thought you were just my mom. And now I realize you are Jennifer Jones, an extraordinary woman who just happens to be my mother." Tears began to roll down my cheeks. Those were the words I had waited decades to hear. "You can come," I finally said, "but you will come as a guest, not as privileged family. You will sit with everyone else, and you will listen to what I have built without your help." "Understood," he replied. "And Daniel? Daniel gets out of rehab next week. If he stays clean, if he continues to cooperate with the police, if he proves he has truly changed, then we can talk about his future in the family." I hung up the phone, feeling a strange mix of hope and caution. My sons were changing, but I had learned not to blindly trust promises. This time, they would have to prove their transformation with actions, not words. The launch event was held in the main ballroom of the city's most elegant hotel. Over 300 people had arrived. Business leaders, politicians, social workers, and especially older women who had found a second chance through our foundation. As I walked among the guests, greeting and thanking them for their support, I felt more alive than I had in years. These were my people now. Not the family that had betrayed me, but the community I had chosen to build. The community of people who believed in second chances and in the dignity of older women. George approached me with a huge smile. "Jennifer, this is incredible. I've never seen such a positive response for a new foundation." "It's because the need was real," I replied. "For decades, we older women have been invisible to society. It was time someone saw us." At that moment, I saw William enter the ballroom. He was wearing a simple suit, nothing fancy, and he walked with a humility I had never seen in him before. Several guests recognized him, and I could see the curiosity on their faces as to why the son who had been disinherited was present at his mother's event. William didn't try to approach me or claim any attention. He simply sat at a table in the back and waited. When it was time for my inaugural speech, I went up to the podium, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. Before me were 300 people who had come to support my vision. Behind me was the giant photograph of Michael and me on our wedding day, reminding me where this journey had begun. "Good evening," I began, and my voice sounded stronger than I expected. 7 months ago, I was a 69-year-old widow who thought her life had ended with her husband's death. I thought my role in the world had been reduced to being the invisible mother of 2 adult sons and the grandmother who waited for occasional visits. "But," I continued, feeling confidence grow in my chest, "I discovered that life can begin at any age if we have the courage to make the hard decisions. I discovered that being older does not mean being invisible. I discovered that being 69 years old doesn't disqualify me from starting a new career, a new mission, a new version of myself." The applause started slowly and grew into a standing ovation. I saw tears in the eyes of many of the older women in the audience. They knew exactly what I was talking about because they had lived the same invisibility, the same underestimation. "This foundation," I continued when the applause died down, "exists because all women, regardless of their age, deserve dignity, respect, and opportunity. It exists because no woman should feel invisible or disposable simply because society has decided her value diminishes with the years." I searched for William in the crowd. He was crying openly with a look of pride and regret mixed on his face. "This foundation also exists because I learned that forgiveness isn't something you give away. It's something that's earned, and that second chances are powerful, but only when they are accompanied by real change." I finished my speech by telling the story of an older woman who had come to our foundation last week. Her children had sold her house while she was in the hospital and split the money. When she was discharged, she had nowhere to live, and her own children told her to fend for herself. "That woman," I said, "now has a decent apartment, legal support to recover what was stolen from her, and a part-time job at our foundation helping other women in similar situations. Because it turns out that at 72 years old, she still had a lot to offer the world. She just needed someone to notice." When I stepped down from the podium, The ovation lasted for almost 5 minutes. One after another, women came up to hug me, to tell me their stories, to thank me for giving them a voice. But the most emotional moment came when William timidly approached at the end of the night. "Mom," he said with tears still fresh on his cheeks, "I want to apologize. Not just for the money, not just for the plan to have you committed. I want to apologize for not seeing you for 35 years, for treating you like you were just my mom instead of Jennifer Jones, this incredible woman who was always there, but who I was too blind to recognize." I looked at him for a long moment before answering. "William," I finally said, "forgiveness is earned with time and actions, but respect, you've already earned that. You came here tonight expecting no privileges. You sat in the back without demanding attention. You cried with pride for my achievements instead of resentment for your situation. That tells me that maybe, just maybe, you're starting to become the man your father always hoped you would be." For the first time in 7 months, I hugged him. Not as the mother who automatically forgives, but as the strong woman who recognizes genuine growth in another person. Daniel's release from rehabilitation came 1 week after the foundation launch. Unlike William, who had worked his way back into my good graces through consistent effort, Daniel's path was more uncertain. The cartel members he had testified against had been convicted, but there was still the risk of retaliation. I picked him up personally, noticing immediately how different he looked. The hollow-eyed, jittery man who had entered rehab 6 months ago had been replaced by someone calmer, more present. He had gained healthy weight, and his eyes were clear for the first time in years. "Mom," he said as he got into my car, "thank you for coming." "How are you feeling?" I asked as we drove away from the facility. "Scared," he admitted. "Being in there was hard, but in some ways it was safe. The real test starts now." His honesty was refreshing. The old Daniel would have deflected, minimized, promised that everything was fine. "You'll have support," I assured him. "The foundation has connections with excellent outpatient programs, and I've arranged a job for you." He looked at me in surprise. "A job? Where?" "At the foundation," I said. "We work with many recovering addicts. Your experience could help others if you're willing to share it." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "You'd trust me to work with vulnerable people? After what I did to you?" "I'm trusting you to begin rebuilding your life," I clarified. "The position is entry-level. You'll earn trust day by day, just like William has at the construction company." "I heard he's actually doing well there," Daniel said with a hint of disbelief. "He is. He's changed in ways I wouldn't have thought possible. The question is, are you ready to change too?" Daniel looked out the window at the passing scenery. "I've had 6 months to think about who I was and who I want to be. I don't like the person I became, Mom. The drugs, the lies, the people I got involved with. That wasn't the real me." "Then who is the real you, Daniel?" He considered the question carefully. "I'm not entirely sure yet, but I know who I'm not. I'm not the man who would hurt his mother to save himself. I'm not the addict who would sacrifice everything for the next high." It was a start, not a complete answer, but a beginning. When we arrived at my house, Daniel hesitated before getting out of the car. "I haven't been back here since that day, when you confronted us." "A lot has changed since then," I said, "including me." Inside, I showed him to the guest room where he would be staying temporarily. "The police still think it's safer if you're not alone right away. Too easy for the cartel to find you." He nodded, setting down his small bag of possessions. "Mom, there's something I need to ask you. Something that's been bothering me since rehab." "What is it?" Did Dad really know about my addiction for years? Did he watch me destroying myself and never say anything? I sat down on the edge of the bed, patting the space beside me. When Daniel joined me, I took his hand. "Your father loved you more than you can imagine," I began. "When he first discovered your problem, he tried to help from a distance. He paid off some of your debts, quietly covered up some of your mistakes. He thought he was protecting you. But he was enabling me, Daniel said quietly. Yes, though he didn't see it that way at the time. It was only in his final year, when he realized how severe your addiction had become, that he began gathering evidence instead of hiding it. He was planning an intervention, Daniel, but then he got sick, and everything changed. Daniel wiped away tears. I wish he had confronted me sooner. Maybe things wouldn't have gone so far. We all have regrets, I said softly. Your father regretted not being more direct with you. I regret being blind to what was happening in my own family. You regret the choices you made while addicted. But we can't change the past. We can only learn from it. That evening, William came over for dinner. It was the first time the three of us had been together since the confrontation 7 months ago. The atmosphere was tense at first, both brothers uncertain how to interact with each other or with me. But as the meal progressed, something unexpected happened. They began to talk, really talk, about their struggles, their failures, their small victories. William told Daniel about his first weeks at the construction site, how humiliating it had been, but also how transformative. Daniel shared some of the insights from his time in rehab, the hard truths he had confronted about himself. I mostly listened, watching these two men, my sons, finding their way back to each other and to me. They weren't the same people they had been before. None of us were. But perhaps the people we were becoming were better, stronger, more authentic than the ones we had left behind. After dinner, as we sat in the living room with coffee, Daniel noticed the stack of files on my desk. What are all those papers, Mom? Project Legacy, I replied. Something your father was working on before he died. I've been trying to piece it together. What is it? William asked. As far as I can tell, it's a complete reorganization of all the family businesses. Your father was planning to consolidate everything under a unified structure with very specific roles for each of us. Including us? Daniel sounded surprised. Yes, but not in the ways you might expect. I picked up one of the files and opened it. William, he had plans for you to head a new division focused on sustainable construction, not as CEO of the whole company, but as a division leader with clear oversight and accountability. William's eyebrows rose. Sustainable construction? But I always told him that was just a passing trend, not worth investing in. He disagreed, I said simply. And he believed you had the vision to make it successful, despite your own doubts. What about me? Daniel asked hesitantly. I found the appropriate file. For you, he envisioned a role developing a new line of farm-to-table restaurants, working directly with local farmers. Again, not running the whole chain, but building something new within it. Daniel looked stunned. That was my dream in culinary school. I talked about it all the time, but then I got caught up in the business side and forgot about it. He didn't forget, I said softly. And you, Mom? What was his plan for you? William asked. I smiled. That's the most interesting part. He wanted me to be the chair of the board for the entire organization, overseeing everything, making the final decisions on major changes. He wrote here that I was the heart and conscience of the family, the one person who always put the greater good above self-interest. The room fell silent as we all absorbed this information. Michael had seen each of us more clearly than we had seen ourselves. He had envisioned roles that aligned with our true strengths, not just our ambitions or egos. It's too late for that now, isn't it? Daniel said quietly. We destroyed his trust. We ruined everything. Perhaps not everything, I replied thoughtfully. Project Legacy wasn't just about business structures. It was about creating a legacy that would outlast all of us, about building something meaningful together as a family. I closed the file and looked at my sons. I don't think it's too late for that part of his vision, but it would require all of us to commit to something larger than ourselves, to become the people he believed we could be, not the people we were. Do you think we can? William asked, vulnerability plain in his voice. I don't know, I answered honestly, but I think it's worth trying. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. when you've both proven not just to me, but to yourselves that you're ready for that kind of responsibility. As they left that night, I gave each of them a copy of Michael's notes about the roles he had envisioned for them, not as a promise, but as a possibility, a North Star to guide their ongoing transformation. Alone in my study, I looked at Michael's photograph and smiled. "You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you?" I said to his image. "The money, the evidence, the secret plans, they were never just about protecting me. They were about saving our sons from themselves." I opened the final file of Project Legacy, the one I hadn't shared with William and Daniel yet. In it, Michael had written a personal note to me. "Jennifer, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you've discovered everything I tried to hide from you. I'm sorry for the secrets, but I needed to protect you from our sons' mistakes while I tried to find a way to save them. I couldn't bear to tell you how far they had fallen. I know you're angry with me for keeping you in the dark. I know you're heartbroken about William and Daniel, but I also know that you're stronger than all of us combined. If anyone can rebuild this family from the ashes, it's you. Project Legacy isn't just a business plan. It's my hope for our family's future, a future where our sons find their way back to the men we raised them to be, a future where you, my brilliant, compassionate wife, finally receive the recognition you've always deserved. I leave all this in your capable hands, knowing that whatever you decide will be the right choice. You always were the wisest of us all. With all my love for all eternity, Michael." I pressed the letter to my heart, tears flowing freely. Even at the end, facing his own mortality and our son's betrayal, Michael had believed in the possibility of redemption, of a family healed and whole again. Was it possible? Could William and Daniel truly change enough to be trusted with Michael's vision? Could I find enough forgiveness in my heart to give them that chance? I didn't know. But as I placed the letter back in its folder, I realized that the journey itself, this path of discovery, healing, and transformation, was already a kind of legacy. Not the one Michael had originally planned, perhaps, but meaningful nonetheless. A year after that infamous day in Rachel's office, I found myself sitting in the garden of my house. The same house my sons once wanted to sell to lock me away in a nursing home. But everything had changed. The garden was more beautiful than ever because I now had time to tend to it myself. The businesses were running better than when Michael was alive because I'd learned that leading with both the heart and the head produced better results than leading with ambition alone. And my family had become something I never thought possible. A real family based on mutual respect instead of false obligations. Daniel had been clean for 10 months now. It hadn't been easy. There had been relapses, crisis nights, moments where I thought I had lost him for good. But something changed when he testified against the drug traffickers who had been blackmailing him. Seeing those criminals go to prison because of his testimony gave him a purpose that drugs never could. He now worked at the foundation helping other recovering addicts. His salary was modest compared to what he used to have, but he told me it was the first money he'd earned that he felt truly proud of. "Mom," he told me last week, "I never thought helping other people could fill the void I was trying to fill with cocaine." William had also changed, though his path had been different. After a year working as a laborer on his own construction sites, I had promoted him to supervisor, not out of favoritism, but because the other workers respected his transformation. He had learned what it means to earn every dollar with honest sweat. He had learned the names of all the employees, their family stories, their real needs. "It's strange," he told me a few days ago as we had coffee in my kitchen, "but I feel like I'm only now understanding what Dad built. It wasn't just money. It was a community of people who depended on us to feed their families." He had divorced Lauren, who had vanished from our lives as quickly as she had appeared. We didn't know where she was, nor did we care to know, but the biggest change wasn't in my sons. It was in me. For 70 years, I had defined my worth through my relationships with others. As a daughter, as a wife, as a mother, I had never existed simply as Jennifer. Now, when I wake up each morning, I am not Michael's widow or the mother of William and Daniel. I am the CEO of 4 thriving companies. I am the founder of an organization that has helped over 500 older women reclaim their dignity. I am a 70-year-old woman who is living the most exciting and productive decade of her life. I am someone who makes important decisions, who influences the lives of thousands of people, who builds legacies that will last for generations. The foundation has expanded beyond my wildest dreams. We now have 3 shelters for older women who are victims of family abuse, a free legal aid program, a job training center that teaches new skills to women who thought their careers were over, and a microloan program that helps senior entrepreneurs start small businesses. Last week, a 65-year-old woman who had been unemployed for 2 years opened her own bakery with one of our microloans. When she cut the ribbon at the grand opening, she was crying with joy because she finally felt useful, valuable, and capable again. But perhaps the project I am most proud of is the Grandmother Mentor Program. We connect older women with business experience with young female entrepreneurs who need guidance. It turns out that decades of life experience, of having navigated family and financial crises, of having raised families and supported husbands in building businesses, makes us exceptional mentors. The young women need us more than we thought, and we have more to offer than society had ever recognized. It's beautiful to see how the wisdom of one generation becomes the springboard for the success of the next. George visited me yesterday to discuss the legal documents for a new expansion of the foundation. "Jennifer," he said as we reviewed contracts, "did you ever imagine you would become all this?" "Never," I answered honestly. "For 45 years, I thought my destiny was to be invisible, that my role was to support the dreams of others without having any of my own." "And now?" he asked. "Now," I said, looking out the window at the garden where Michael and I used to walk together, "I understand that he didn't just leave me money in that dusty envelope. He left me permission to become who I always could have been, but never dared to be." This afternoon, I have a meeting with the mayor. He wants the foundation to partner with the city government to create a pilot program that could be expanded nationally. Assisted living programs that respect the independence of older women, day centers where they can socialize and stay active without feeling like burdens on their families, public policies that recognize that older women are a valuable social resource, not a problem to be hidden away. The idea of influencing policies that will affect thousands of women across the country excites me more than any inheritance I could have received. My sons come for lunch with me every Sunday, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely enjoy my company. Our conversations have evolved from apologies and resentment to real debates about business, about life, about the future. William consults me on important decisions at the construction company. Daniel tells me about the difficult cases he handles at the foundation. They ask for my advice, not because I am their mother, but because they respect my judgment as a businesswoman and as a person. It's the family relationship I always wanted but never knew how to build when we were younger. Have I forgiven them completely? That's a question I often ask myself. Forgiveness, I've discovered, is not an event but a process. Every day that I see William treat his employees with genuine respect, I forgive his past arrogance a little more. Every day that I see Daniel help another recovering addict, I forgive his betrayal a little more. But more important than forgiving them, I've learned to forgive myself. To forgive myself for being invisible for so many years. To forgive myself for accepting emotional crumbs when I deserved banquets of love and respect. The dusty envelope I received that day in Rachel's office sits on my desk as I write these reflections in my journal. It no longer contains just the bank account number that changed my life. Now it holds letters from women we have helped, photographs of project inaugurations, newspaper clippings about the foundation's achievements. It has become a symbol of transformation, of second chances, of the beauty that can arise from the ashes of humiliation. Every time I look at it, it reminds me that endings can be beginnings, that crises can be opportunities, and that it is never too late to become who you are destined to be. If I could go back and speak to the Jennifer who walked out of that office crying a year ago, I would tell her, Don't cry for what you have lost. Celebrate what you are about to gain. Don't lament the sons who betrayed you. Prepare to meet the men they are going to become. Don't cling to the invisible woman you were. Free yourself to become the powerful woman you always had inside you. I would tell her that the pain she feels in this moment is the birth pang of a new life, and that new life is going to be more beautiful, more meaningful, and more powerful than she ever dared to dream. And to you, dear reader, who has followed my story to the end, I ask, how many times in your life have you accepted being invisible when you deserve to be seen? How many times have you accepted crumbs when you deserved banquets? How many times have you allowed others to define your worth instead of discovering your own power? My story is not just about an unexpected inheritance or a dysfunctional family. It's about the moment we decide to stop surviving and start truly living. It's about the moment we realize that it is never too late to write a new chapter of our lives. Because it turns out that the best years of our lives can be ahead of us, not behind us, if we have the courage to claim our power and use it for something bigger than ourselves. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below and let me know the city you're watching from. And if you enjoyed my story, check out 2 other channel favorites. My daughter-in-law wanted my house, so I invited her to lunch, and they called me the useless grandma until they saw my bank account.